Welcome to this new automotive news video for Saturday, June 13, 2026. Today we're going to talk about a new ultra-economical combustion engine that has just been unveiled, another technology developed to save the combustion engine that's making great strides, and Volkswagen, which, while the price of new cars keeps rising, has just unveiled a particularly affordable new model. I hope you'll find these topics interesting. If you do, I'm counting on you to show it as usual by leaving a like, subscribing for upcoming videos, and boosting this one. If you see the option, using it helps boost my channel's ranking and visibility. Also, leaving a comment with your thoughts on today's news is appreciated. While in Europe, many car manufacturers are now focusing almost exclusively on electric vehicles, China continues to invest heavily in the development of combustion and hybrid engines. And the latest example comes from Dongfeng. The Chinese brand has just announced that its new Mach-powered 2-liter turbo hybrid engine has just received official certification, issued by Qatar, which is an independent organization responsible for verifying the performance claims made by car manufacturers. An engine that, according to tests carried out by this organization, achieves a maximum thermal efficiency of 45 to 45.5%, which is much higher than current combustion engines, which are usually around 40%. This means, in practical terms, that every drop of gasoline that enters the engine can make it go farther, which means, as you may have understood, that this engine is capable, on average, of consuming much less fuel than current engines. If it's 45.5 that caught everyone's attention, it's because it concerns a 2-liter turbo engine mainly intended for hybrid engines that will be installed in SUVs, as well as in large vehicles. Models that generally have to deal with significant weight, high performance requirements, and controlled fuel consumption. Specifically, Dongfeng designed and developed this engine so that it can handle the weight of large modern SUVs without excessive fuel consumption. And when you see how much SUVs dominate the current market, including in Europe, you realize that this was probably an excellent idea. To achieve this level of efficiency, Dongfeng developed a new combustion architecture called Mach, M-A-K-C. The goal is to better control combustion inside the cylinders while limiting the phenomenon of knocking, a problem that occurs when the air-fuel mixture ignites uncontrollably. This engine also adopts a so-called long-stroke design, with a stroke-to-bore ratio of 1.29. What does that actually mean? It means that this architecture allows for more controlled flame propagation in the combustion chamber, which helps improve the overall efficiency of the engine, and therefore reduces its fuel consumption. Among the other innovations, there is a high-pressure direct injection system operating at 350 bars compared to about 200 to 250 for most current models. A high-pressure system combined with a high-energy ignition system, which allows for an increased compression ratio while maintaining a high level of efficiency over a wider operating range. Basically, that means everything in this engine has been done to optimize the amount of fuel going into each cylinder as much as possible, to reduce it as much as possible, while increasing the amount of air as much as possible. So Dongfeng has also integrated a cooled low-pressure EGR system, because yes, there are also EGR valves on gasoline cars, even though that's not very well known. Its role here is to reduce combustion temperatures in order to further limit the risk of knocking. For those unfamiliar with knocking, you should know that in a normal engine, the air-fuel mixture is supposed to ignite. At the precise moment when the spark plug produces its spark, knocking is when part of the air-fuel mixture inside explodes on its own before that crucial ignition moment, which creates shock waves inside the cylinder and can simply damage the engine in the long run. According to the figures provided by Dongfeng, this technology alone could improve fuel consumption by 3 to 10%, depending on usage conditions. Chinese engineers have also worked on reducing internal mechanical losses. The engine is equipped with a variable displacement oil pump, electronically controlled, as well as DLC coatings for diamond-like carbon. It's an ultra-thin coating that's applied to various engine parts, which is extremely durable and has a very low friction coefficient. Basically, all the moving parts of the engine can move more easily. Less friction means fewer losses, which means better fuel consumption. There's also a variable geometry turbocharger. Now, that's not a big innovation. It's been around for a long time. Still, it does actually allow, at least on paper, to reduce fuel consumption while improving the vehicle's performance. Thanks to all this, the brand claims to have expanded the high-efficiency operating range by 30% compared to previous generations. Basically, the optimal RPM range, where the engine is most comfortable and consumes the least, is 30% wider compared to previous generations of engines. This announcement comes at a time when competition is becoming particularly intense in the Chinese hybrid vehicle market, where all Chinese manufacturers are now designing engines that exceed 45% efficiency. It's a real shame that in Europe we've stopped working on combustion engines. Because with our expertise, we could have done incredible things. And above all, we have to realize something. If the Chinese keep working on hybrids and combustion engines, even though they represent a huge majority of global electric car sales, it's because they've clearly planned for combustion engines to continue in the future. And here, I'm talking to you about Dongfeng, but they're clearly not the only ones moving in this direction. There's Geely and there's also Chery, who have launched ultra-high-efficiency engines and have hybrid technologies that are almost unique in the world. One thing is certain. While many considered the combustion engine to be a mature technology, Chinese manufacturers are proving otherwise. While we are trying to catch up on the 10-year gap we have with them in electric car battery management, there is still a significant margin for improvement. And as for combustion engines, well, believe it or not, it's far from over. In this regard, a new innovation by Mazda is currently being developed to save, once again, the combustion engine. Remember a few months ago, we talked about Mazda trying to develop a CO2 capture system. So let me sum it up for you like this, but basically, the device Mazda was talking about at the time was, well, a vacuum cleaner, literally, that sucked up the CO2 from the vehicle while it was driving. The goal is to keep combustion engines alive while making them carbon neutral, because if there's no CO2 technically, they could continue to be sold after the 2040s in Europe. It sounds like science fiction. Nobody believed in it. And yet Mazda kept working on this device. And well, now that's it. Mazda has developed its device. They're testing it now and may start industrial production later. This system uses a material called zeolite, which has a special structure and is capable of separating certain gases, especially the well-known CO2. The manufacturer created a compact device installed on a race car used as a rolling laboratory. The system is an extra catalytic converter added to the exhaust line. Its role is to trap, as you might have guessed, part of the CO2 produced by the engine before sending it to a specific tank on board the vehicle. Last year, during its first tests, Mazda only managed to capture 84 grams of CO2 over a 24-hour race, which was pretty poor. But they repeated the same test this year, and the results are quite promising, since they captured almost 1 kilogram of CO2 over the same period of use. The amount of CO2 recovered has increased nearly tenfold in just a year. That's much better. But there's still a lot of work to do, since a Mazda like the one tested, which is a sports model, emits about 200 grams of CO2 per kilometer driven. With 1 kilo of CO2, that only represents about 4 to 5 kilometers of actual vehicle use. Well, obviously, here we're talking about a race car. On a small Mazda, let's say a bit more economical, the CO2 emissions are almost half as much, so maybe about 10 kilometers worth of captured CO2 in reality. We're still not close to a car that manages its own emissions. But for Mazda, the main goal is to show that it's technically possible to capture CO2 on board a vehicle while it's driving. A technology that could be of particular interest to companies working on synthetic fuels, which are made in part from CO2. Mazda believes that the CO2 collected while driving could be reused to make new fuels and create a kind of virtuous cycle. So as you can see, for now, Mazda is more in an experimental phase than on the verge of an industrial revolution. Still, this technology at least raises a fascinating question. Tomorrow, could cars start to recover some of their own emissions even before they're released into the atmosphere? Well, that's all well and good. All these innovations are impressive, but they also raise another question. How much will the cars of tomorrow cost? And on that point, we have some good news coming from Volkswagen. Finding a new car under 20,000 euros is now nearly impossible due to inflation, new regulations, and market electrification. And even Volkswagen, by the way, is a victim of this, since, as we mentioned a few days ago, they have already increased the price of their cars because of the arrival of the Euro 7 standard, which forces them to develop a whole range of external systems for their vehicles. Nevertheless, Volkswagen has just launched a new version of its Polo at the same time, which gives a bit of hope to drivers looking for an affordable new car. It's the Polo Young. Its goal is clear: to attract young drivers and those who may be buying a new car for the first time. Volkswagen is launching this new Polo with a special offer that brings its price down to 18,900 euros. Now, that's still quite a sum. But once again, compared to the rest of the market, it's actually not that bad. That's 2,000 euros less than the previous entry-level version of the current Volkswagen Polo. Good news, Volkswagen hasn't removed any equipment to lower its price. You'll find 15-inch alloy wheels, LED headlights, Apple CarPlay, a digital instrument cluster, as well as an 8-inch infotainment screen. You might wonder how much less the Polo would cost without all this equipment. It's simple under the hood, with a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine making 80 horsepower and a 5-speed manual transmission. So obviously it's not sporty, but for a first car or for daily urban use, it's actually pretty reasonable. The only small downside for now is that this Polo Young is only available on the Italian market. It's incomprehensible. Why is Volkswagen delaying sales in France? We're not sure, but it would likely be a hot seller. That's all for today's review. Hope you enjoyed the video. If that's the case, don't hesitate to show it by leaving a like, subscribing for upcoming videos, and supporting the channel by clicking the join button below. I'll see you tomorrow for the next one. Ciao.